All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to our monthly webinar. We're going to give a few people some time to join with our Dr. Buzby. Let us know in the comments where you're signing in from. We'd love to hear all across the country where people are located. And of course, if you have a senior dog, if you work with a senior dog organization, or if you have senior dogs at home. I have 2 senior dogs, one that may bark in the background. I'm trying to have a conversation with him, like, can you just give me 5 minutes? So if you hear him, but let us know, even their names. I had a dog named Fizzle, so I used to always talk about that name, but just definitely let us know. My name is Jackie McDonald. I'm one of the board of directors, one of the newest, and our board of directors is all volunteer. And I first and foremost want to thank you guys for just loving senior dogs. For the past 10 years, I've worked in shelters and have seen the lines for puppies and the most high adoptable dogs. So it really takes a special person to see the gem of senior dogs and want to care for them in their retirement years. So I cannot thank you enough for caring about them, supporting them, and of course, supporting an organization like Gray Muzzle. A couple of quick housekeeping things. You probably know Gray Muzzle's main focus is to provide resources and funds to animal welfare organizations across the country so they can in turn help more senior dogs. So our grant review has opened right now. If you know an organization that does great work or that you want to support, please let them know. It's time right now to send in their applications through March 15th. We'd love to be working with new organizations. Last year in 2022, we gave out $705,000 in grants to help senior dogs. 3,300 dogs got dentals, got their retirement homes, were on those comfy beds. And just, I mean, what we say is they're not dying alone in a shelter. They are with loving families. Even if they have a couple months left, if they have a couple years left, they're with loving families, and it means the world to us. So we want to give out more money as much as we can. And then the main event, our Dr. Buzby. She is on our advisory board, and we're so lucky to have her back. She's done previous webinars for us that you're welcome to go back and see. I also wanted to mention that this webinar will be recorded, so you don't have to scribble down any notes. You can watch it later and share it with anyone you think would be interested. But Dr. Buzby has a really unique approach of combining traditional Western medicine, alternative therapies, and really just creative tools to get the maximum amount of wellness with helping dogs get their best health, be their most comfortable. She also invented these really neat toe grips for dogs that were slipping and sliding on hard floors, which we know is pretty common with our old kids. So I'm so honored that she's here. Like I said, with having 2 dogs, I'm eager to hear what her 10 favorite things are. And as she's going along, please drop questions in the Facebook Live or in this chat box, because we'll have some time at the end where we'll ask her your questions. So again, Dr. Buzby, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being such a support system, and can't wait to hear.
It's truly my honor. I am so glad to be here and sharing my perspective, which is not necessarily the right perspective, but I've been a veterinarian for 25 years. Very early on in my career, I got certified in animal chiropractic and veterinary acupuncture. And so that has been really a hallmark of the way I've gone about practicing medicine, is trying to think, as you mentioned, from an integrative approach from Western medications all the way to acupuncture and herbs. You know, what is the best combination of things? Typically, we're using what we call multimodal therapy. So what is the best combination of things that we can do to help these guys feel as good as possible and just have that quality of life, that length of life, that health span as long as possible? So I'm excited to jump in. I anticipate, hopefully, that we're going to end a little bit early because I want to allow questions. I welcome your questions. There are, of course, like just go look at Amazon. There are millions of dog products on the market. So I don't know how much I'll be able to get into specifics, but feel free to ask the questions and I'll do my best. And we can certainly talk about general categories. Okay. So senior dogs, they deal with such a unique set of issues, although they're not necessarily all that unique because we're familiar with most of them in senior people as well. If any of you have taken care of elderly parents or relatives or worked in that field, you know, these are issues that we see with aging. And so just kind of a long list, because it's always helpful to identify what are the problems, what are the pain points, because ultimately my favorite products, my favorite things are going to be ones that address these pain points. So number one is pain, something that we see with aging, older joints, arthritis, that ties into mobility loss. And I'm going to talk about that when I talk about slipping. Mobility is so key for these guys. Dementia. Dogs do get basically a version of doggy dementia. We call it canine cognitive dysfunction. And that's a real thing and can be a real issue for their quality of life and the quality of life of their families. And because it ties into the next bullet, which is nighttime rest. Often those dogs are restless at night. Their sleep-wake cycles are disturbed. And it's like having a newborn baby. If you're not sleeping at night because the baby's up or the dog is up at night, it's rough on everybody's quality of life. Vision loss, hearing loss. Here's one that I did a webinar on a while back, and that's GOLPP. That stands for geriatric onset. So it's a senior dog thing. Laryngeal paralysis, which has to do with folds in the neck, in the larynx, being paralyzed or partially paralyzed and not opening and closing normally, which affects the airway. And the last P is a relatively new one in veterinary medicine. We recognize now that this is a syndrome. And so that's polyneuropathy, poly meaning many, neuropathy meaning nerves having problems. And so it's really a systemic disease and not just a disease of the neck, the back of the throat, the larynx specifically, as we previously thought. Reflux, dogs do get reflux, and that can tie into the GOLPP diagnosis. Slipping, if you've ever had a senior dog and you have hardwood floors, you know it's a real thing. Dental disease, an issue for all dogs, but just compounds as they age. Masses, little skin tags, skin masses, and then incontinence, fecal and urinary, a very real thing. So I could have gone on and on, but I ran out of space on the slide to talk about issues of senior dogs. And it's why, just to kind of reiterate what was already said, why those of you who are here, I know if you're here, this is you who love senior dogs, who have a special place in your heart for senior dogs. These can be challenging things to deal with. And I just want to take a minute to celebrate you and applaud you and thank you for what you do for your dog and for senior dogs as a whole. All right, so here's my disclaimer. If you get 100 vets in a room and ask for their opinion on something, you're going to get 105 opinions. We call it the art of medicine. It's not necessarily a science, although of course it's based in science, but these are my opinions. I do have a holistic bent coming from the background of, I did own a very traditional regular veterinary hospital for almost a decade, but doing alternative or complementary medicine as well. I try to have a holistic perspective. I am an accidental entrepreneur, so toe grips fell in my lap, and I'll talk about that because they're on the list of my favorite products. And so I just wanted to give that disclaimer that I do own that company, and I'm going to talk about 2 products on the list that I do have a stake in, of course. But other than that, I have no affiliations with any other companies. I recently wrote a blog on gabapentin because we talk about in our blog on our website, we talk about issues that senior dogs deal with, and that's a whole gamut of things, including the medications that they take. And one commenter suggested that I was too friendly with the drug gabapentin and was suspicious that I was funded by gabapentin in my, that I was getting kickbacks. So first of all, gabapentin is a generic and made by about 6 different companies. But second of all, I do not take any kickbacks. I don't have any affiliations with any of these companies. I am sharing as I would with you if you were my client. So if you're my client and I'm at your house doing a house call and I'm just giving it, like pouring my heart into what I think is the best for your dog. I'm just going to speak to you in that same way. And there's no ulterior motive. All right. So number one on the list, without further ado, is orthopedic dog beds. The older I get, the more I realize like that good night's sleep is key, and what I'm sleeping on really matters. So I recently saw a good friend of mine on Facebook. He had the opportunity to spend the night at like the Air and Space Museum. It was like a field trip with his kid, and he slept on the concrete floor in a sleeping bag. And he said, you know, man, this didn't bother me when I was younger, but I felt that like I was crippled sleeping on the floor. So we know that dog beds do matter. We actually have some companies that have done some research to show that it actually helps dogs get around better. And I love the concept of an orthopedic dog bed, particularly the ones that have memory foam, just because they're so supportive. And for years, I think dog beds were an afterthought, like they were sort of an upgraded comforter. Okay, here's just a place that the dog can call his own and go lie down. But they have now become like a huge, I'm sure, multi-billion-dollar industry. And this is an Orvis bed in the picture. My clients really like Orvis. They hold up really well. They're washable, but there's a lot of different companies out there. Like I said, I do like memory foam. I have clients that have used crib mattresses for big dogs and have really liked that, or their dogs like it. I mentioned Orvis. There's a company called Big Barker, which I like. It's made in the USA. I just really like their values and their bed. I will say that dogs seem to have preferences, just like some people swear by their Sleep Number bed and other people swear by their, you know, whatever other kind of mattress. Dogs do seem to have pet preferences. So it's not a wrong thing if you can to try a couple different options. Many of the bed companies offer a full warranty, and let your dog have a say in what they prefer. Some of the memory foam are just difficult for dogs to have to stand up on and then get off of. They just kind of feel like they're sinking too deep, I think, and it's difficult for them to maneuver. So as much as I do like memory foam for their body, some dogs don't seem to care for it. And I will say that bolsters, that's that lip that goes around the bed, I am a fan of them, because I really believe that, believe it or not, that dogs should have pillows. I've done a lot of work on adjusting dogs' necks over the years. And I think sometimes the way dogs lay down positionally, especially if they're hanging their head off of a bed, I think it's not good for their neck. And so a bolster gives the dog the option to prop and position differently than just a flat surface. My pro tip on the right, we talked about incontinence being an issue for senior dogs. So one thing you can do is cover the inside foam with a garbage bag or a zip up waterproof crib mattress, and then put the cover on top of it after that. And that really helps with these beds absorbing and retaining odors. On to number two, joint supplements. So almost every client that comes to me for the first time has a regular veterinarian. I'm typically not the regular veterinarian at this stage in my life. I'm really limiting my practice to the complementary care. So they'll come in and I'll say, okay, so let's go over the history. Tell me about your dog. Like we go all the way back to the beginning, and I want to know what they're on in terms of medications and supplements. And I am really surprised by the number of people that come in and they've got their medications that the vet's prescribed, but they're not on a joint supplement. And I am surprised by that. And I would just say my personal experience, my opinion is that every senior dog should be on a joint supplement, even if you don't notice that your dog's limping or having obvious joint problems. I think by the time they cross into that senior stage, so depending on the breed of the dog, because we know that larger breed dogs, certainly giant breed dogs, they effectively age faster. That curve for them is different, more steep. So maybe 5, 7, 9, somewhere in there, I think every dog needs to go on a joint supplement. Huge believer, because they work. First of all, I do believe that just anecdotally in my 25 years, but also there's plenty of science supporting individual ingredients that are in joint supplements. But beyond that, they're very safe, very unlikely to have a side effect from a joint supplement. The only thing I've ever seen is maybe mild transient diarrhea for very rare dogs that are sensitive. So the benefit, the risk reward ratio is very low. There's a high reward, low risk. So I'm just going to take a minute to talk about supplements in general, because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. And I want everybody to know that maybe what you're buying on Amazon, or, maybe what you are giving your dog isn't what you quite think it is. And so I just want to kind of give you pause and give you some information to contemplate. So obviously there's supplements for all kinds of things. We're going to limit this to joint supplements, but we've got joints, we've got immune function, cognitive function, and I am going to talk about a cognitive function supplement a little bit later, coat and skin, reducing anxiety, and then aiding digestion. And we're going to talk about one of those too. So what exactly is a supplement? Well, it's a substance that's not considered a drug, a vitamin, a mineral, an herb, or a combination. And often these are combination products that's used as a supplement to the diet. And that's where the word supplement comes from. And they can be in pills, they can be in soft chews, liquid, etc. Here's the problem. In 1984, the government, in all its wisdom, got involved in the supplement industry because it was rapidly growing. And they made a definition, and they said, this is how we're going to define supplements and their regulation, but they didn't clarify if that was only human or if that was human and animal. So there was a gray zone. 12 long years later, they finally clarified that this act only applied to human supplements. And so the problem with that is there is no FDA oversight or regulation for pet supplements today. So technically, you can make something in your garage and sell it online, and there's not going to be any government agency that's regulating that, which is a bit scary. And really does highlight my reason for saying all this is that I really want to stress it's important to use reputable companies that are well known, that have done the research, that have proof of their quality control and safety measures. And I just put a few different supplements on this slide. I know it's a really busy slide, but these are some of my favorites. On the upper left, we have Dasequin. I think that comes in like 9 different formulations in terms of some variation in what's in it, and also variation in how you can administer it, from tablets to soft chews, etc. Dasequin's a great product. It's got this old standby glucosamine. It also, this formulation, not all of them do, but this has MSM, chondroitin. Chondroitin and glucosamine are kind of the big ones that everybody's familiar with. They have something unique here, which is this avocado soybean, this ASU that they call it, powder. That's unique to this product. And Nutramax, the parent company, has done a lot of research. I recently got to visit Nutramax because I ran into the owner at a conference and realized, like, what, you're in South Carolina and I'm in South Carolina. And so I went up and took a tour of the company, and I was really blown away with their standards. And their staff is, I think, well over 800, and they employ 30 chemists alone working on the science and safety behind these products. Boswellia is a great anti-inflammatory, and green tea extract as well that's decaffeinated. So that's Dasequin, great product. U-Move on the right is really gaining in popularity. That has glucosamine, chondroitin, hyaluronic acid, vitamin C and E. This is sourced from green lip mussel, and I agree. I am a huge fan of green lip mussel as an ingredient in dog supplements. I'm a fan in general of whole food supplements, meaning rather than serving up vitamin C, for example, in the lab form, ascorbic acid, I love serving up vitamin C in a form that it comes in nature, because there's so many compounds around just that ascorbic acid molecule that help with absorption and bioavailability. So this is a product that I import and sell. The middle one, Encore Mobility, and the lower infographic goes with our product. So like U-Move, it's a green lip mussel-based product. So it's got the glucosamine and the chondroitin and the vitamins and the hyaluronic acid, and those are all great things, but it combines New Zealand deer velvet. And if you have interest, I have several blogs about it on our website. Deer velvet, the deer antler grows from like nothing to this huge 40-pound structure in 6 weeks' time every year. And in order to do that, interestingly enough, it's considered a plant in the traditional Chinese medicine formulary because that rapid growth is like a weed, right? So deer velvet's been used for thousands of years in traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, and it's basically because it has a very high concentration of growth factors. And growth factors act almost like stem cells in the body. It's really fascinating and helping to regenerate and heal tissue. So it's just some of my favorites. The middle one, Aquamobility, is the one that I prescribe to my patients and sell on our website because you've got all the benefits of green lip mussel plus the deer velvet. And again, all of these very, very safe. Next, omega-3 fatty acids. So the big thing when you think about fatty acids, think about reducing inflammation. And inflammation is potentially like the cardinal sin of aging, right? We get inflammation in various tissues. We know a lot of these dogs are overweight, unfortunately. The majority of American dogs are overweight. And fat is actually an inflammatory tissue. It just contributes to the process. So whenever we can reduce inflammation, we reduce this cascade of bad things that can happen, including pain. Even development of cancer in cases can be linked back to inflammation. All right, so if I had an NFL first round draft pick in supplements, I used to say, and it's still up there, but omega-3 fatty acids were super high on my list because they have the ability to impact every single cell. So if you remember back from your basic biology, the cell membrane, like it's everything. You're made of cells. And the omega-3 fatty acids are key because they're part of building and repairing cell membranes. So two big long names there, basically EPA and DHA on the second bullet. These are the good fats. Interestingly, dogs can't produce these on their own. Their liver can't manufacture these. They must be consumed orally. So if your dog's on a balanced diet, which commercial diets these days mostly are, it's not like your dog's going to have a deficiency. However, research is really pointing to high levels of omega-3s being optimal. I have my whole family, my kids, since they were young, I've had my whole family on omega-3s because I thoroughly believe it's critical to brain development. And I just can't say enough good about supplementing omega-3s. And I think really it doesn't even have to be senior dogs. I think it's a good thing for every dog. So again, reducing inflammation, it can have impact in the bladder, the joints, the brain, the eyes. I mean, this is documented both in terms of cases and research, the kidneys, the heart, the skin. Certainly for a dog that has allergies, the place to start is adding omega-3s to the diet. It's not likely to be the miracle cure, but it's a great place to start to safely reduce inflammation. And there's been a study. So dogs with chronic osteoarthritis, so arthritis, who were fed omega-3 fatty acids, they actually experienced less pain and saw an improvement in their condition. And it just makes sense. All right, so I'm just going to take a minute to talk about omega-3s because I think it's interesting. You can go wrong, and I don't want you to go wrong. So one of the questions I get frequently is plant-based versus animal-based, fish-based specifically. And flaxseed oil, you may have heard of that, people taking flaxseed supplements. The problem is flaxseed has to be converted to EPA and DHA in the body. And dogs and people and cats, they're all very different in terms of what enzymes they contain and enzymatic conversion pathways that they can operate in their liver. And so dogs have a limited ability to make this conversion. So I think it's important just to stick with the fish-based. And there was a study in boxers in 2007 where the plant-based didn't work in helping. Boxers are known for cardiomyopathy. It's something that the breed is associated with, unfortunately, from a genetic standpoint. And so they were doing a study on hearts, boxer hearts, and the fish oils did show improvement, dogs that were on the fish oil over the plant-based flax oil, the flaxseed oil. Okay, so choosing a product. Again, I don't receive anything from recommending this. It's just my favorite. It's the brand I use for my own family. I really like Nordic Naturals. They fish in a sustainable way. Secondly, they are in the cold waters off of Norway, the Norwegian waters. They are not, they're very careful and they're testing for contaminants because heavy metals from, unfortunately, contamination in the ocean can be an issue, bringing that into the supplement. And then through a pathway, basically poisoning the animal. So they're very careful, and they have very excellent quality control measures. And they have omega-3 PET that comes in a liquid and also in capsules. Last thing, how do we store it? Really, because it's an oil, it can go rancid, right? Fatty acids, it's a fatty thing, it can go rancid. And so we want it in a cool, dry place. It should never exceed 80 degrees. Exposed to heat, light, air for any length of time. I mean, I'm not talking about opening your lid and taking out a capsule, but leaving it out in hot temperatures, leaving the lid off of a liquid formulation for any significant length of time, exposure to the air, it can cause free radicals to form. And that's what gives it that fishy, rancid smell. If your fatty acid supplement stinks like fishy, like a fish market, there's a problem. That's been oxidized. And if you take oxidized fish oil, that can actually do harm. And that's what you want to avoid. It can actually be cause problems to the body and basically be I don't want to say a form of, it's not a toxin per se, like a hemlock poisoning, but it absolutely can be a precursor for problems. All right. Next is probiotics. So I had said that my NFL draft pick may be switching because I recently, my supplement draft pick, I recently went to a conference in November and heard a great lecture on probiotics. I'm a very big believer in probiotics. I've used them my whole career. I use them in my family, definitely when anybody has to be on antibiotics. But I was so just really learned a ton in these lectures and was very inspired on like how deeply important probiotics are. So the lecturer cited a study, it was a 5-year study where they tracked GI flora, so the natural good bugs, the good bacteria that live in your GI tract naturally after taking amoxicillin. The study went on for 5 years and they stopped it. And in those 5 years, after taking just a simple basic antibiotic like amoxicillin, and don't get me wrong, I prescribe antibiotics routinely, but the GI flora changed permanently. 5 years later, it still wasn't back to the baseline. And that's not to say that after 5 years, it repaired itself. That's just where they ended the study. So in our Western culture, many of us and our pets too have been on antibiotics. And we know that that is going to impact the GI flora, both when they're on it and also long-term, even after they're off. And that GI flora is linked directly to the immune system. When I say immune system, I'm not just talking about, oh, my dog's more prone to getting sick. The immune system ties into so many things, development of cancer, allergies. I mean, these are immune related issues. The immune system is not functioning properly. So not necessarily just under functioning, but over functioning can be a problem. So when I'm looking for a probiotic, I want a multi-strain supplement that contains multiple different strains of the good bacteria. Ideally, it would have prebiotic and probiotic. Prebiotics actually help the good bacteria in the GI tract grow. So it's not just that you're giving the good bacteria, you're also feeding the good bacteria in the GI tract to produce and reproduce. I want a supplement that's been clinically researched. Again, back to the fact that there's no regulation. So I want the company to take ownership to do that because you can do harm. And this is something that I didn't know. I figured, you know, what can go wrong? If I give a supplement, if I give a probiotic and it's not a good one, well, you know, it's just a waste of my money. But one of the things I learned in that lecture is giving a bunch of dead, and it makes sense, giving a bunch of dead bacteria. So like 5 billion colonies per unit. I mean, we're talking about a lot of bacteria that are condensed into these capsules or powders, however you take it. If they're dead and not viable, that can do harm. If you serve up a bunch of dead bacteria to the GI tract, that can be inflammatory. So again, back to trusting the company where you get them. And I like Nutramax's Previable Forte. That's the one that I go to. I think that's the prescription strength. If it has Forte after it, they have just Previable that's available on Amazon and online. Okay, medications. You might be surprised to see this on my list, but I put it here because I have a lot of clients that I think, especially those who find me because of the holistic options that I offer, but they come and it's like medications are taboo. And I get completely that we need to balance the concern about side effects with the benefits. I understand that. However, senior dogs, back to that first list of all the things that can go wrong and are probably going wrong and progressing with time, our ultimate goal shouldn't be how long can we keep them off of medications. Our ultimate goal, I think, should be what can we do, again, looking in kind of that global holistic picture, to make them as comfortable and happy and mobile as possible for as long as possible, and do that safely. So unlike supplements, medications are going to be more likely to have side effects, and I recognize that, but it doesn't make me take them off the table as an option. So lots of medications that I potentially use judiciously with my patients. First of all, the NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, Rimadyl, Medicam, Pravacox, all of those are in that category. And yes, they do have side effects, but I'm not afraid to use them if the dog needs them. And these are conversations you want to just be having with your veterinarian. Gabapentin, I mentioned that earlier. Gabapentin can make a dog loopy, for lack of a better word, wobbly, drunken sailor, but it typically wears off, and it's good for nerve pain. It's good for pain. And again, relatively safe. Tramadol's fallen out of favor with veterinarians. There's certain veterinarians that you could bring up tramadol to, and they would probably like say, you know, it's which Dr. Voodoo medicine, because it was very, very popular 15 years ago, but recent studies have shown that it doesn't work the same way in dogs as it does in people. Okay, that's fine, but I think it does still work. It's just doing something differently. It may not be working for pain. It may be working more almost as a mood enhancer. And sometimes that can be a good thing for these senior dogs. So anecdotally, I really like tramadol, depending on the patient, and I do still use it. It has become a controlled substance, which is an issue. Definitely harder to prescribe controlled substances, and a reason why veterinarians may not want to do that. Joshua, I'm in a meeting, okay? Okay, and this is a good time to mention that I have 8 kids and my life is a circus. So sorry for the interruption. Okay, so amantadine is another one for pain. Oh, tramadol. If you're interested in any more information on tramadol, you can go check out my podcast or my blog. I had the privilege of interviewing a board certified veterinary anesthesiologist. He's retired since, but he was like the anesthesia god, like amazing, from a vet school and NC State. And he talked about why, just because it wasn't working the same as other drugs didn't necessarily mean it wasn't having an effect, and maybe a positive effect. So all these conversations to be having with your veterinarian. Amantadine, another potential kind of like tertiary pain medication that we use. Adequan, an injectable for joint health, and then symptom-specific medications, depending on if there's a heart condition or if there's some other sort of specific issue, a liver condition or a gallbladder problem. All right, on to stairs and ramps. I really think it's important that we protect dogs from themselves. And one of my saddest stories was a patient that I loved named Dixie. Well, I love all my patients, but this one Dixie had a special place in my heart because I saw a lot of her and her sister Maggie, and her parents would bring her for chiropractic and acupuncture to my little office. And they got a Range Rover, like specifically because the vehicle had this lowering raising feature, and they could like lower it down to help it be easier for her to jump out of the back. And so she was in the parking lot for an acupuncture visit, and she jumped out of the back and tore her cruciate. She was a senior dog, tore her cruciate ligament. And I just remember feeling so horrible, like witnessing the whole thing and thinking, here's this dog that's here for she came to me to be helped, and she got injured in my parking lot. It was so sad. I am a huge fan of ramps. One of the things I will say is it's really important to try to train early. I do believe you can teach old dogs new tricks, but it's harder when they're, 10 or 13 and you're trying to teach them to use the ramp. If you can teach your young dog, I consider this one of those foundational things for a young dog, life skills. learning how to use a ramp, learning how to be crate trained. Like those are just good life skills for the future if needed. And I mentioned crate trained because if they ever have to be hospitalized, it's important for them to know that skill. So there are a lot of commercial options for ramps, as you know, but you can do a DIY thing as well. And I've seen on Pinterest and online different ways that you can do that and really keep the costs down. In general, jumping up isn't my favorite thing for these guys, but jumping down is really a problem. Jumping down is the place that they're going to get hurt on the landing. And that can be anywhere from jamming their shoulders and injuring their neck to Dixie and her ACL. So I really don't like to see these guys jump particularly down off of beds, vehicles, etc. And that's where the ramp comes in. Okay, this is my favorite in the list. I will confess that because it's a product that I developed and have been selling worldwide for the past 10 years. So dog nail grips. Whether or not you're interested in toe grips as your traction product, I do want to talk a little bit about traction for senior dogs. I think it's really critical that we all understand this because it's a big deal. So I believe that mobility is a senior dog's greatest asset. It's why people get so much joy out of putting their dogs in carts, handicapped dogs who are in carts and regain their mobility, and they're tearing. I'm sure you've seen TikTok videos and they're tearing all over the terrain in their wheeled carts because they're made to move. They're just pack animals designed to be on the move and with their family. So why do they slip? And the issue is that they're not designed to live indoors on hard surface floors. They're designed to live outdoors on grass and earth and terrain. And in that terrain, when they feel like they're going to slip or when they feel unstable, they will take their paws and they'll flex their paws. They have flexor tendons for this purpose, as well as other purposes, but they'll flex their paws, and the nails then also flex and engage and dig in like soccer cleats. And soccer cleats into the earth work perfectly. But soccer cleats on hardwood floor, tile, laminate, it just doesn't work. They can't get any purchase. And so what we did with toe grips, so simple. We just took little, their custom engineered material and essentially just it doesn't take much. It turns out it doesn't take much, which is the cool thing. They're so minimalistic, but they go on the nails where that nail would need to get purchased. And now they've got a rubberized surface to grab. And young dogs can compensate. Young dogs running around the house, you might see them slip, but they rarely injure themselves. They can compensate. They have the balance, they have the muscle tone. Senior dogs often can't compensate, and so they struggle. And I want to make this point that it's not just a physical toll that it takes on these guys, it's also an emotional toll. They really do lose their confidence, and they might isolate themselves to a dog bed or a carpeted room in the house, but they're not confident to engage with their family and easily traverse the house. And I can't think of a worse thing for a dog. Well, I guess I can think of worse things, but I do think it's a sad thing for a dog to have to be fearful in their own home. And I want to really stress, like I said, that the confidence is relevant to quality of life. So here's a close-up of toe grip. So simple, so minimalistic, which is what I love compared to boots or booties for traction, which are covering the whole paw and really obliterating the dog's natural mechanism for traction. Instead of disabling it, toe grips enable it. And I want to show you a video because I want you to see what I'm talking about with this confidence as well as traction. So the dog on the left without toe grips, this is a blind and three-legged dog. And she lived like this. Owner tried tons of different options for her. Her mom was a veterinary technician, and so she was sharp. She was on the ball. Okay, now I've got to figure out how to get back to my presentation. 1 second. Sorry, guys. I'm still screen sharing here. Okay, let's see. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I don't know how to get back to my presentation. So this is when you see that the veterinarian is a tech 0. So give me 1 second to try to get back here. and finish this thing. Okay, I'm going to X out of, well, we were going along so swimmingly. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to try to X out of Zoom. Sorry, not Zoom. I'm going to X out of Keynote and see if I can go back in it again and get this thing to restart. I'm so sorry. I don't know what number of thing we're on, but we're going to skip past that video. That's for sure. Okay. I'm back. So let me just share my screen again. I apologize. Okay. Okay. So supporting and lifting harnesses. Very important. If you have a bigger dog, especially, you can injure yourself lifting these dogs. And the dog that I mentioned before, Dixie, her sister was Maggie, a Great Dane with a neurologic condition. It was a real struggle for us, her caretakers, her family, and then myself. I was there a lot and helped at times to try to maneuver Maggie. So I think this is not only good for the dog, but also really good for the people involved too. And my favorite harness, and really it's, I think, almost unanimous among veterinarians and rehab practitioners, is the Help 'em Up harness. This is a picture of it. It's really this total body protection or total body lift. So you're not just lifting some part of the dog. The dog wears it and then it has handles. So it's almost like you're lifting by a suitcase, but it allows the weight to be distributed. So you're not putting excess weight in any one part, like, one certain part of the harness or one certain part of a leg. You're distributing it through the whole chest area and through the whole pelvis area. And it's designed, this is one of the really nice features. It's designed to be really left on. I like to tell my clients to take it off at least daily and check the skin underneath and make sure everything looks fine and just give the skin a little bit of time to breathe. But it is designed to be breathable and you leave it on all the time, besides these checks where you take it off and just give it a rest. But for the most part, the dog's wearing it. So if the dog goes to scramble and get up, you don't have to go find some device and put it on the dog. The dog's wearing it and you've got the support you need when you need it. If you need help fitting these are sold on Chewy and Amazon and all over the place. But if you need help fitting this, reach out to the company, because the only place I've seen people go wrong is with fitting. Other than that, it's a great product. I also like the Ginger Lead if you don't need that much support and you just need something for the hind end. The Ginger Lead, fantastic company, fantastic people, and that just gives that little bit of hind end support. Okay, now I'm going to just touch on some products that deal with the doggy dementia issue that I mentioned earlier. Doggy dementia is a real thing, and sundowner syndrome seems to be a real thing in dogs. And if you have a dog who's in the teen years, odds are likely that there's some of this going on. And certainly by the time they reach 15 to 16, almost 2/3 are thought to have some manner of what we call canine cognitive dysfunction. So this is there's a lot of words on this slide, but I want to just hit the gist of it. It was an email that I received from a client named Monica who had reached out based on a YouTube video that I had done on cognitive dysfunction. And she's talking about her struggles with her 17-year-old Chihuahua and how much she appreciated that she could relate to what she saw in the video, and that it made her emotional that someone understood what she was going through. And so I point this out to say, you're not alone. As I said early on, caring for a senior dog, depending on their age and their stage of health and potential disability, I understand. I know it can be a very big project and a full-time job. And I think we can get fatigued as caretakers. And I want to just acknowledge that and just hug you, virtual hug to all of you. But I also want to say that there's help. And back to my blog, there's lots of blogs on our website, which is toegrips.com, TOEGRIPS.com, on many of the topics I've covered today, but there's several on cognitive dysfunction. I lumped all this together. Life is a supplement that contains several herbs that are good for brain function. And I I really like this product. There used to be another one called Nutrix on the market as well that I really liked. And they took it off the market because I think they wanted as much of the active ingredient for a human product. That's my gut feeling. They didn't want to divert it to the veterinary market because it was made from an animal source. I think it's from the jellyfish or something like that. So Life is really the premier product on the market today for cognitive dysfunction. Anytime you're giving a supplement, medications typically work quickly. Supplements, I don't necessarily expect them to work instantly. I mean, give it 30 days, even up to 6 weeks before you make a judgment call. But there's also foods that you can use. And I don't typically talk about prescription diets, but these are really interesting. Bright Minds by Purina, NeuroCare by Purina, and Hills BD for Brain Diet. NeuroCare and Hills BD are both prescription diets, and Bright Minds is over the counter, which is potentially handy. And here's the theory on how these work. They're diets that are rich in, I'm sure you've heard the term MCTs, medium chain triglycerides, and they ask the brain to run on this alternative energy source as opposed to carbs. And this creates ketones and an increased mental capacity, an increased mental functioning capacity. And so there was this study done in 2010 on this theory in the British Journal of Nutrition, and it was done on older dogs. I think they were beagles. And the dogs that were on this diet, the senior dogs on this diet, were significantly improved over the control group. So it's an interesting theory and something to consider. Again, bottom line, if your dog, or if you suspect your dog may have a little bit of dog eat dementia, talk to your veterinarian. Don't be a silent sufferer, because there are things that we can do. And my last one, point 10, is adventure. I am a huge believer in the fact that dogs love to be outdoors. They love to be smelling things. I think just sniffing things opens a whole world up for them that we can't even begin to comprehend based on how much more intense their nasal senses are than ours. So you hear about people creating bucket list adventures for their dogs. I love that. I mean, I think as long as the bucket list is taking into account what would be important for the dog and not just the person, I think that's great. We have a blog on wagons and strollers, and again, just getting them outdoors. If they're no longer able to take those walks with you and you need to help them from a mobility standpoint, I think it's so enriching for their lives, for their minds, just to be in the great outdoors. If I'm working on a patient who may be antsy, for example, they're just nervous or they have anxiety, one of the tricks I'll use is just take them outside and do the same thing to them outside. But because they're distracted by all the sights and sounds and smells, often they're just so much more cooperative. And I think it really does a lot, like I said, to enrich their quality of life. This is our blog, towgrips.com. It's right on the navigation bar. And so many of the things that I've talked about today, I looked at it yesterday. I think we've got like over 50 pages of blogs, and each page has 4 or 5 blogs on it. So there's a lot of blogs on it, all written by myself or other veterinarians, all edited by veterinarians. So one of my beefs with Dr. Google is there is some great information out there, but there's some really sketchy information out there too. And not that we're perfect, but I'm proud to say that this is a fully vetted blog. All right, and a few bonus ideas as we wrap this up, some VetGyver ideas. Night lights. If you have a dog who has anxiety at night, or they tend to be up at night, just giving them a little light in the hallway can make a big difference for them to get settled and feel secure, because just like people, I think night vision is an issue. I'm also a big believer, if you've got stairs, if your dog's struggling on the stairs, besides toe grips, that can help a ton in stairs. If you tape that leading front edge of the stair with some sort of a light colored tape, I think it can help the dog visually appreciate where the stairs start and end, as opposed to just seeing this structure where, as their vision worsens and maybe their depth perception changes, they kind of struggle to see the stairs. And so by taping them off and clearly marking them one by one, and you can even use a little traction tape for that too, I think it's really helpful. And then furniture, being creative. So many of my clients have taken the legs off of their couches, put the couch cushions down on the ground, just being creative about protecting them, keeping them safe, and still keeping them involved in the family. One of my other favorite things for senior dogs is the concept of veterinary rehabilitation. It's the fastest growing aspect of small animal veterinary medicine. And this is a website where you can find a vet rehab specialist near you. Work with your veterinarian for a referral. It's everybody working on the same team, but it's crazy. I mean, it's amazing to me, all the things that they can help with, ranging from weight management to just maintaining muscle mass, to balance, to helping to recover from surgery, injury, etc. It's really a great resource that we have in our toolbox now that we didn't years ago. And I just wanted to mention a code, GRAY23. Towgrips.com is where I sell my joint supplement and my toe grips. It's also where the blog lives, tons of great free information. But if there is something that you're interested in from this talk, please feel free to use GRAY23 through the end of the month to get 10% off. And we also do sell these products now on Amazon as well. Bottom line, the most important thing, my absolute favorite thing, and I learned this my senior year of vet school during clinicals, when we're rotating with the doctors and we're actually putting all of our book knowledge into practice. Every dog pretty much had a person at the end of the leash. And I just was in awe of that bond that people share with their animals. And that's my favorite thing. Like, that's my number one favorite thing, is the love and the commitment and the dedication that you share with your dog. And again, I wanted to applaud you for that and tell you, keep up the great work. So many of my patients are living on, I call them living on love. I mean, the odds are stacked against them based on whatever serious health condition they may have, but I'm convinced that they're living on love. And at this point, I want to open it up to any questions that may have come up, and I'll do my best.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Buzby. This has been excellent. I'm so glad you mentioned about teaching dogs to use the ramp while they're younger, because I always figured my dog would not go up the ramp once he was old. So I should have been doing that, and I will do that in the future. So that was a good tip, unrelated to once they get old too. So thank you for that. I love the green lip muscle too. A bunch of questions. First, and I don't know if I'm even pronounce this right. How do you feel about Epacatin for kidney failure? Do you know that medication or supplement?
I think so I don't know if I know that name, or at least said that way, but I think it's a drug that's basically replacing a hormone that's made by the kidneys. Erythropoietin not erythropoietin, a hormone made in the kidneys that stimulates red blood cell production, because when animals are in kidney failure, sometimes anemia becomes a part of that picture, because the kidneys aren't producing this thing that the bone marrow needs to make red cells. So if I have that all right, which I think I do, then yes, I mean, I think it may be very important if your dog has renal disease and also has anemia. I think it's a great resource we have.
Awesome. Quite a few questions with the toe grips about what if your dog bites at their nails, if they consume one, etc.
Yeah, I'm really thankful to have the opportunity to address that, because it's our number one misconception. Toe grips are not a perfect product. Frankly, there's nothing out there that's a perfect product, but dogs eating them off is really not an issue. First of all, we've been selling them for over 10 years, and adding up the data and our customer support tickets over the years, it's less than 1% of the time that happens. And if you think about it, they're sitting on the end of the nail tips, which, unlike skin and paw pads, that has nerve endings right to the end. The nail tip, first of all, doesn't. There's a quick that runs through the nail and ends at some point. It doesn't go all the way to the very, very tip typically, but that's encased in the hard nail. It's not even like the toe grip is making contact with that. So the dogs really don't seem to notice them, don't seem to bother them. Very rare that they chew them off. If they do, it's like an OCD type dog that's going to be looking for trouble, not or dogs that maybe are known paw biters because of allergies or some other reason. And so I would encourage people to try them. Definitely don't get hung up on that. You can go look at our reviews, because so many people are like, I was skeptical. I thought my dog would eat these right off, and they didn't even notice. If they do ingest them, they're made from a non-toxic material. And to date, thank God, we've never had an issue with the toe grip causing any sort of a GI problem or obstruction. They're small enough that they pass right through.
And I saw one just pop up while you were talking. Do they glue on?
They don't. So that's something really unique about our product is they create like a friction seal. They're snug and they just stay on by creating like a vacuum seal on the nail. That's, I would say, for the vast majority of senior dogs plodding through life. The dogs that have what I call conscious proprioceptive deficits, so it's where they tend to drag or scuff their paws because of a neurologic issue, that motion will pop off the toe grips. And in that case, we do recommend super glue to keep them on.
Awesome. What is your opinion on laser therapy?
Love laser. I'm not an early adopter of things. I must not be a risk taker because it took me a while to get on board with laser. I never want to be the person who's like, hey, let's use my patients as guinea pigs. So I'm doing a lot of research, a lot of conferences, a lot of lectures, talking to a lot of smart colleagues before I bring anything on board in my practice, and certainly as a recommendation. So I was a slow adopter of laser, but that was many, many years ago. I love it. There are hundreds of thousands of studies out there now supporting it. I have a laser that I use every day in my own life on patients and also my kids. And yeah, I don't think you can go wrong. Worst case scenario, when done properly. I mean, if someone who's using it properly, which we're going to just make that assumption, worst case scenario is it just doesn't seem to work that well. And it's, it's a financial like, oh, well, that wasn't the best modality for my specific dog. But other than that, I see no reason not to try it. And I would encourage you to try it.
Awesome. And what about turkey tail for immune support?
Wow, I'm gonna have to call in a pass on that one. I'm so sorry. I do not have any words of wisdom on turkey tail, but I will look into it.
That's great. I actually appreciate and what you said in the beginning about you're not all knowing, because sometimes I do go to my vet with like one random thing I read on the internet, and he was like, I'm gonna have a different opinion than the other vet, and it's very true. So that's cool. I just saw something else pop up. Oh, gabapentin for seizures.
Yes. So I think don't quote me on this, but I'm almost sure it's like a seizure medication in people. Like that's its function in people. We do use it that way, rarely in veterinary medicine, but we're primarily using it for pain control, specifically neuropathic pain from nerves. It wouldn't be my first line. I can think about 3, 4, possibly 5 things I would use before I would go to gabapentin for seizures in dogs. But I say that with a caveat of talk to your vet, because I used to use phenobarbital or potassium bromide as my go-tos when I was in practice, and I don't prescribe those anymore, not because I wouldn't, but because in the type of practice I do now, that's not my role. And I just recently saw something that phenobarbital has increased like 800% in cost. So I can see where maybe we're making more creative decisions, taking even cost and sustainability for a client into account than we did in the past. Things have changed. So yes, I think it can be used that way. That's not how I have ever used it in my practice, and talk to your vet, because I do think we need to be creative about whatever's best for the patient.
This is a good one and a popular one. Have you worked with CBD full and broad spectrum, and your opinion?
So you said CBD, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So CBD is a tricky one. I told you I was not an early adopter, and I've been slow to get on that bandwagon. We do have a couple blogs on it on our website. I have seen some clients who have had great results in their opinion. I've also seen some negative things. So it's one of those things where we weigh the risks and the benefits, and I want people to know that there are potentially some red flags with that for me. I would say that the company that I like to recommend if my clients want to try it, I think there are a lot of reputable, good companies out there. The company that I like is Elvet, E-L-L-E Vet. because they do work with veterinarians. They have veterinarians, if not on staff, directly consulting for sure. And they're working with Cornell and I think Colorado State doing studies, which is really great, trying to get the science behind it for pain and for anxiety, et cetera. And so I'll say a couple of things that I see as a red flag. Number one, the CBD is an oil, right? Typically that's how it's administered, CBD oil. And oil is fat-based. And for dogs who are prone to pancreatitis, I have seen some dogs triggered into pancreatitis from CBD oil. I have also seen CBD have a negative interaction with other things that the dog was on, and specifically with anesthesia-related drugs. So again, mention it to your vet if you're on it, have the discussion with your vet, and ask me in 10 years and I'll have a better opinion.
All right, we're going to do two more because I know we're right at the hour. Do you feel adequate is good? And also your opinion about acupuncture.
Love Adequan. I have used that for my whole career because I was a horse vet in my first life. And so that's really where it came out of, was for racehorses. I'm just going to even say, just go to our blog, towgrips.com. There's a search window where you can type in your topics and just type in Adequan and everything you need to know is there. I really like that drug. And it's something that maybe working with your vet, you could even do the injections at home potentially. So probably one of those ones where I feel like the reward can be very high compared to the risk. And then acupuncture. Yes, I love acupuncture. I'm certified in acupuncture. Again, very, very safe. I don't have miracle results with every dog by any means. I typically tell people, like, let's give it 3 tries and then, reassess and see if this is a good use of your time and money. But often I use it in conjunction with chiropractic and supplements, et cetera. I do try to, if the dog is ancient and really suffering, I just do it all at once because I care that I just want the dog to feel better. But if the dog's maybe a youngish senior and he's basically stable, I do actually try to just try one thing at a time so I know what's working and what's not, because ultimately, whether it be acupuncture, chiropractic, laser, I mean, there's a whole ultrasound therapy. I mean, there's a whole list of things that can be done. And the rehab vets that I mentioned before, they will be experts at this. I want to know what combination is the best for that dog. And it's never a recipe. Every dog is different.
Makes total sense. Laura, did we have any questions from Facebook?
We did. We have a question about any tips for hand feeding. The commenter says they have been hand feeding for about 6 months after half a jaw removal, using regular kibble and wet food with pumpkin, making meatballs.
My tip would be, great job, keep going. I mean, I think consistency, you've probably figured it out after that amount of time, like the consistency of the meatballs, you might be able to play with that to get the dog more interested. But hand feeding is a really interesting thing, because I recently had a client who is hand feeding your dog, and the dog probably could be eating on her own, but she really just uses it as like a special bonding time. It's like their special time together where they share a meal. So I don't know that I have any specific tips. I do know that it's time intensive. And so I just want to thank you for that, and just enjoy that time with your dog. Make it a special time of the day together.
We are running over the hour. A couple of things in case anyone needs to jump off. As Dr. Buzby said, on her website, towgrips.com, there is a blog where you could learn a lot more on all of these topics. Dr. Buzby, it does look like there's a lot of individual questions on medications, Galliprant, long-term use of prednisone. Would they see some of that also on your blog?
Yes, I have a love-hate relationship with prednisone. I had to take it myself for a first time ever in my life. I took prednisone and it really messed me up. But my doctor said, there's no pathway to healing for you that doesn't go through prednisone, unfortunately. So I write a whole blog on that. I don't know that we have Galliprant specifically, but we have a lot on NSAID. So let's do this, go to the blog, use the search window, search around. And if you need something specifically, a question that was not answered, there's a contact form on our website, and just reach out through the contact form and just say, I have a follow-up question for Dr. Buzby from her webinar today, and that will come to me and I will get you an answer.
Perfect, perfect. And our next webinar is actually March 2nd on calming your aging dogs. So we'll have another chance to talk for anyone that wants to join that one as well. Just didn't want to keep anyone over, but we so appreciate your time. We appreciate everyone's questions and interest in all of this. So thank you so much, Dr. Buzby. This has been wonderful. And I know I'm leaving with a ton of information. I actually took notes after I told people they didn't have to. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Love the gray muzzle. And thank you guys for being with us today.
Awesome. All right, y'all have a good afternoon.